Hey guys, it's Alice.
I go to war, I'll fight for you. Even when I've left, I do right by you. I'll be your everything, your blue sky. I go to war, I'll fight. Damn right.
So today's video is going to be my May wrap up slash there's a few books from the end of April as well. I filmed one wrap up this year and it was from the start of the year until about midway through April, so I'm just like finishing off that and then doing my May books. If you haven't met me before, hi, my name's Alice, great to meet you. Welcome to my life. Here are the books. Can I take a thumbnail without dropping them? 10! Well, I shall be going on my Goodreads and telling you what I rated all of these. Okay, so the first one up on the list is Little Women. This is a classic, and yes, there is a coffee stain on there. I don't know if you can see. My dad would bring me coffee every morning, and if I had books stacked up on the desk, he'd just put it on top of the books. But I don't mind, you know, don't mind. I don't want to get hated for this. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Not because it's not an incredible book, but just because I always struggle through classics. I'm sure that in terms of classics, this is one of like the best ones. There's so many things in it. Basically, I know people have a thing against it, but I fold pages when I find something interesting, and I have like a few pages folded in here. I really love the references to God and faith and reliance on that. I don't know, I just really enjoyed that. I loved all the different sisters, and I feel like I don't know whether I read this when I was younger, but now I've read it, I feel like I can watch the film, and it's beautiful, and it's one of those things where like I just feel like it was something I had to have read, you know? There's certain books where you just, by the time when I die, I needed to have read them. I need to have read them. So this is one of them. So I started reading that at like the new year and then finished it at the end of April. Got this one done. And that is actually a book that is on the Rory Gilmore book list, so that's great. The next book I read was A Torch Against the Night by Saboteur. So I read this in 2 days, from the 23rd of April to the 25th of April. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. If you watched my last wrap up, you would have known that I basically sang all of the praises about An Ember in the Ashes. I thought it was an incredible fantasy book and I was so excited to get into the next one. I literally bought this immediately and read it, and I was obsessed with it. I flew through it. I've folded so many pages, so there's clearly so much stuff in here that I found really impactful. This book, basically a continuation. This is the second book in the series. It follows Elias. I don't know how to say Elias or Elias and Leia, basically. I always say Elias in my head, and I don't want to give any spoilers because I, as I said in the last video, went into the first book not knowing anything about it, and that was the best thing for me because I found it so entertaining and all of the plot twists blew my mind. So I really don't want to spoil anything about this, but I love these characters, I love the world, I love all the mystery and the magic system. And if you're looking for a fantasy book, and this is a young adult fantasy book, some people struggle with young adult because they can't relate to them because they're younger or whatever, and these are both teenagers in this book, the two main characters, but I don't think that takes away from the incredible nature of the story anyway. If you're looking for a new fantasy series, I would 110,000% recommend these. I think they're incredible. I immediately bought the third book and then realised after buying the third book that the fourth book isn't out yet, so I've put off reading the third book because I don't want to run out of this story. So I've got the third book, which is The Reaper and the Gates, but I'm not reading that yet because I want to drag out this series a little bit longer, you know? And then the last book that I read in April was The Summer I Turned Pretty. So I basically got the version that has all 3 books stacked together, so they're actually quite small books. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I must have read it in the past because I remember this story, but on my Goodreads in 2016 I wrote that I wanted to read it. So if I have read this, it was before 2016, and I obviously had no recollection of reading it in 2016, so it rang bells, you know. This book basically follows this girl called Belly who goes off to cousins every year in summer with another family that they're really close to, and so it's her and her brother Stephen, and then these 2 boys, Connor and Jeremiah. They've like grown up together, they spend every single summer there, their mums are best friends, their dads don't come along with them, and it's just the best summer feeling book. If you want like a really quick, short, contemporary book to get you in the summer mood, this is just it, you know. It's full of like them going to the beach and going down to like arcades and stuff. One thing I will say is like they didn't annoy me as much in the first book, but Belly is like 15, so she is quite young, and now that I am 21 it is a bit like, oh, it makes me feel so old, like, oh, 6 years ago, dear God. lot. But I still really enjoyed this book, and I loved Susanna. She was my favourite character. Susanna's the boy's mum. She's just the best, and yeah, so this like fitted the bill of what I wanted. I wanted a break between big fantasy books and like that hefty classics book. Why I say hefty, it's Little Women, it's not that big. So this was perfect for that, and then I will come back to these when I read them. The first book that I read in May was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. Guys, if you know me, you know that these books, right, ignore my water glass, these books, the Throne of Glass series, started me on my book loving journey. Loved books growing up. When I was 9 I had a reading age of 13. When I was finishing primary school going into secondary school, I'd just read the Twilight books and I was reading the Hunger Games books and stuff, and then I just couldn't find anything to read. I lost all interest because the books that were for my academic reading level were beyond, like, not my maturity level, but I didn't want to read loads of young adult books about things that I didn't quite get at that point when I was 11. So I kind of just stopped reading, and then the thing that brought me back into reading and made me watch loads of booktube videos and all of that stuff was that series. And this is a prequel to that series. This actually was released, I think, after the second or third book, but I never read it when I got it. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna wait till the series ends and then go back. Little did I know, this is a little bit of a spoiler but not too much, basically this series goes on a huge journey. So about book 3 or 4 is just completely different. Like if you were to pick up the first book and the last book, you'd have absolutely no clue. All the people are different, and you know, there's so many changes and twists and turns and whatever. So coming back to this is quite odd because these characters felt quite far away from me. Oh my god, I loved it. I've missed Selena so much. I've missed this character so much, and it's so interesting finding out about her before all the books. So in the first book, Throne of Glass, it's about this assassin called Selena who was in the salt mines of Endovia, and she gets pulled out of the salt mines where nobody else survives, and she's like lived longer than anyone else in these mines in slavery. She's an assassin and she gets put into this competition to be the king's champion. So it's basically like, I think 24, do I just have 24 in my head because I've been reading the new Hunger Games book. It's a group of assassins basically, or thieves or soldiers or whoever, and they all compete against each other to be the king's champion, and eventually whether they like die or get defeated or lose a challenge or leave, one of them's left and then they are the king's assassin. If she wins the competition, she then works for the king for 4 years and then she's free. So that's the premise of the first book. This is a prequel, so you basically get to find out all about her life before she was in the mines. So you find out about her being one of the most notorious assassins at the age of like 17. You find out about different like jobs that she's been on, and they all link into all the different books in the series because later on there's people that she meets that she has a past connection with and we've got no clue, and this just gives us a bunch of backstories. So it's basically a collection of novellas about her. I think my favourite was The Assassin in the Desert. I really loved that. What I also really loved is that all of the novellas felt quite separate to me, which I quite liked. It didn't just feel like an extra story. I liked that they were separate. They obviously were linked and they connected to each other, but I quite liked that definition between each of the books, you know? I don't know, I just really loved the one with the desert, the one about the mute assassins. I just found so interesting. You find out some really harrowing stuff, basically. One of the people that she mentions in Throne of Glass is this guy called Sam, and you know nothing about him, you don't know anything. And I'd always wondered who Sam was, what that whole story was, and this made you find out. So there was something really comforting about jumping back into this world, but in a way that I'd never seen it before. So I flew through this, I just loved this, and I cried at the end because these books made me emotional. So that was incredible. 5 out of 5 stars, yeah, 100%. Loved this. The next book I read is this book called Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. Oh my goodness me, I loved this book. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. At first I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, but then I realised I was rating everything 5 out of 5 stars, and I was like, actually, this was incredible, but it's not like, it is like up there in my list of favourites, and I do really want to get the next book and I want to keep reading this series. I think it's incredible. And this magic system, this world building, oh my goodness me. I did find some of the world descriptions quite confusing. Like my understanding of all of the different places and locations and who was at war with who and who wasn't at war with who, I did find that quite confusing, but I was able to wrap my head around it. But this is in a world where people are witches, and you have different types of witches. You can have iron witches, you can have thread witches, you can have fire witches, you can have air witches, water witches. water witches, tide witches. It's these two girls who are thread sisters, and what we discover is that thread sisters is when you have a life connection. So like if one of you saves the life of another, your threads, which are these things that come out above your head that no one can see apart from thread witches, become intertwined. And it follows these two girls called Safia and Isolde, I think is how you say her name. I could be butchering that completely, but I'm not sure. And this is a whole journey. It starts off with them trying to ambush somebody who like played them the night before, and then it ends up with this whole hunt and journey because Safia is a truth witch. And she's like the rarest of them all, and no one knows that she's a truth witch because if people did know, they would try and take her and use her for their advantage and all this stuff. So this followed them. I found it so entertaining. There's this guy in here called Merrick who I loved. I found that so entertaining. Also there's this guy that I'm not going to spoil it, but there's this guy who hunts them a little bit, and I shouldn't like him, but I do, and I'm positive that he's going to be in the next few books and he's going to have some kind of pivotal role to play. He's a very mysterious character. I think he's going to be one of those where he's evil and you should be evil and you should like him, but you secretly do, and you secretly hope that he'll turn out good, but he probably won't, you know? But again, this was just an incredible fantasy book, and I loved going into a completely different world. Like this world is so different from our own, and that's one of the beauties of books for me, is I can just like dive into something that's completely different to what I know. Loved this. This was great. Next we have another book that is the beginning of a fantasy series, and that is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This book has been on my list for years because, as you may recall in my last video, I finished a book called The Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in a duology, which is also set in the Grishaverse, right? And it comes after these books. But for some reason, I read those other ones first, because I listened to them on audiobooks, and then obviously I already knew quite a lot of the world, but from a different place. Is it even mentioned in here? Yeah, so these books take place in Ravka and the other books take place like way over here, like somewhere completely different. So this book follows a girl called Alina, and she is a soldier, and the world that she's in, there's this huge war going on between the Ravkans and the Fjerdans. There are these people called Grisha who have certain powers. There's a whole list of what the different powers are to help you understand. Heartrenders, healers, tidemakers, inferni, a bunch of different people. They can all do different things. Heartrenders, for example, can control your heart, slow your heart, things like that. Fabricators, fabrics, make things, something to do with like the bending of metals is another one, and it's all just very, very interesting. So this follows Alina, and at first it follows her and her best friend Mal. They grew up together in an orphanage and they go to the war together, and then something big happens and Alina releases this magic that she didn't know that she had, and then it follows her being taken away and joining the Order of the Grisha. So she's then like inducted into this world, all of a sudden is trying to be like trained up to be able to use her powers for good and to help this guy called the Darkling, who thinks that she's like the key to all of his problems. And I won't spoil any of the plot twists and stuff, but boy oh boy oh boy, the plot twist. Maybe I was naive and not expecting it, but there was, okay, one character, we'll call him Ben. His name was not Ben. At first I was like, oh, he's evil, we hate him, we don't like him. And then you get to know him and I was like, oh, I kind of like you. Maybe this is actually good and it's going to work really well. And then you're like, oh my good god, he's worse than I thought. Ben is actually the worst person to ever walk this planet. Fake planet. So that was a whole experience, and in the end I don't know where the second book is going to go, because I don't know what's going to come of this. And there's so much betrayal, and another incredible fantasy book. And Leigh Bardugo, she's just an incredible author, and so I can't wait to carry on this series. And now I understand why everyone was so obsessed with them, but I just loved it. And I also loved how the main character, she has flaws, she's not perfect, because it's so easy to read characters in books who are meant to be perfect and they've got no issues, and like their only issue is that they like try too hard and all this stuff, but like she has real issues and downfalls, and she's made mistakes, and you can see that, and it builds your connection with the book, because there are things that you'll get annoyed at her for, and you also get annoyed at other people for her. And it's honestly, this world, great, incredible. I mean, as of most of these books, read the books, you know, they're great. I feel like I'm definitely running out of steam here. Okay, we'll speed through these. The next two books I read were the last two books in this, which is It's Not Summer Without You and We'll Always Have Summer. I rated these both 3 stars because Ellie annoyed me. annoyed the heck out of me. So this bit is going to be spoilers, right? Because I just need to rant and get this out of my system for a second, and I'm going to talk about them as if they're merged together because in my head they were. When I put the book down, you can come back if you don't want spoilers, okay? Excuse my language, she really annoyed me. First of all, she begins off being in love with Connor for her whole life, and then all of a sudden she's in love with Jeremiah, his brother, who's her best friend, and then Jeremiah cheats on her. I know I'm really spoiling it. Jeremiah cheats on her, right? And then she's like, how can I trust you again? And he goes, marry me. She's 18, he's 19, they're in college. He's like living his frat boy lives. And then obviously the whole family is shocked and terrified. They go to get married. Connor declares his love for her even though they broke up like however long ago. And then they end up not getting married because... what? And then like on the wedding day they decide to not get married. And then the epilogue of the last book is like her sending all these messages with Connor, and then you find out that she gets married to Connor. And I'm like, hun, you can't jump between brothers. You can't, like, bruh, do you know what I mean? They're not, like, imagine being like, oh, you know, so like, do you know his brother? Oh, well, actually, funny story, I was engaged to his brother. What? What? Sorry? Like, yes, the second book was interesting. The second book was this like lovely little journey that was actually alright. But honestly, I was just getting so angry at the end. I like struggled to read this because I was like, I know that they're being stupid and making stupid decisions because I just don't trust any of these. And the way that Belly was thinking about Jeremiah, you could tell that there was just something off, and then you were like, but stop flitting between boys, like you can't just like, they're not, I don't know, it's not like a TV channel where you can just like change between them. They're literally brothers and you like have been engaged to both. Like honestly, I loved the first one for the summer vibes, but past that point these are no longer enjoyable summer vibes. She's just annoying me now. But then the thing is, obviously I understood Belly, I understood her frustrations, but like if they just hadn't been brothers it would have been more understandable. But the fact that they're brothers and you couldn't choose, like it would be different if it was just like, you know, one boy and another boy, but they're literally related. Their family have gone through some stuff and you've not assisted. So honestly, I needed to get that out. If you ever catch me trying to date brothers, just smack me around the head with this book. But I'd recommend the first book. But honestly, if you're going to read a Jenny Han book, read To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Next book. I'm calmer now. I'm going to speed through these because I've been talking for way too long. I read this book called A Mindfulness Guide for the Frazzled by Ruby Wax that my dad recommended to me. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars just because I'm not a very big non-fiction reader, but I found this quite entertaining, and there's a lot of like psychological stuff that I found really interesting. There's like a mindfulness guide in the middle that you can run through if you so fancy. I more read this because my dad lent it to me, but it's good every now and then to read non-fiction books to actually like grow your mind and learn things. So all in all, glad I read this. She's quite a funny author, so there's a lot of things that I turned down the pages of. It's just quite interesting learning a little bit more about your mind and how it works and how mindfulness can actually help you, because you know when you learn it in school and you're like, this is the most boring thing I've ever done. This explains why it's useful and why you should do it. Finally, good because I'm sweating, I reread Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. And I gave it 5 stars again because after reading Assassin's Blade I was just like, I want to read that book again. I want to read that book knowing what I know from the prequel, and I want to go back into this world and I want to read it again. And this is like a 400-page book. I previously described it when I was talking about the sequel. These characters always hold such a special place in my heart, and I really liked going back to them before all of the character arcs and all the changes that occur, because these are just the ones that I like remember most prominently. My sweet little Kale, my sweet little Dorian, I just love them. I think they're the best. Dorian is the Crown Prince and Kale is the Captain of the Guards. I just love him and I love them. I don't think I'll carry the reread on. I don't think I'll go all the way through them. I don't remember anything that happens in Crown of Midnight, so maybe if I do I'll reread that one, but I just really felt the urge to reread this one, so that's what I did, and I finished that on the 29th of May, so finished this right at the end of the month. Yeah, so technically I read 7 books this month, and then the first 3 were from April. I've been filming for a solid half an hour, and I've been talking quite a lot, so this is probably going to be a very long video. If you've made it this far, gold star for you. But yeah, that's just the books that I've read this month. Hopefully I can continue this like really good reading streak. So I think I've actually read 20 books this year, which is incredible. My New Year's resolution at the start of the year was to read 6 books. I'm now on 20, so I've upped my goal to 26, because that then, obviously 52 weeks in a year, half of that is 26, so that means that I would be reading 1 book every 2 weeks. But obviously it's June now and that's the end of the video. If you guys have read any of those books and you want to chat about them in the comments, please feel free, that would make me really happy. Or something I always find really interesting is that thing where if you like one book you'll like another. So if you see any of those books and you think, oh, if you really liked Truthwitch then you'll really love this book, and send me recommendations, that's also incredible. Yeah, and I hope that this has inspired you to read some books. I'm very bad at wrapping books up just because I feel bad giving spoilers, because I want people to read it and I want them to experience it the same way I did, and I normally go into books with not that much knowledge. Maybe at some point I have to do a video where I just spoil absolutely everything so I can rant about things, because it did feel quite good getting my feelings about The Summer I Turned Pretty off of my chest. So we shall see. But yeah, that's all from me for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and had a lovely day, and I shall see you hopefully next Monday with another video. Bye!